The crypto market is filled with tons of noise. Blockchains and major projects face challenges in communicating with their ecosystems due to rapidly changing algorithms, an overwhelming amount of information, and increasing complexity in the industry. Sure, every project communicates on X and Discord and Telegram, but no crypto project has successfully streamlined their communication with their community and ecosystem partners. To solve this, Jacquelyn Melinek, an award-nominated crypto journalist, and Anthony Pompliano, aka Pomp, longtime entrepreneur and infamous investor, have co-founded Token Relations. In today's fascinating conversation, we're joined by these two incredible builders to discuss the problem every crypto project is facing and how they plan to solve it, the opportunity they see for a new category to form in crypto similar to investor relations, except it's token relations. Is Pomp a Bitcoin maxi? I ask him this question and you'll be surprised by his answer and where they both think we are at in the evolution of crypto and what that means for the future. GM, welcome to Milk Road Radio, the easiest path to get smarter about crypto. I'm Jay Hamilton, and I believe that on-chain is the next online. This is the opportunity, and I'm here to guide you to capitalize.
Crypto will go up more than 100x in both users and value over the next decade. If you're listening to this right now, you're extremely early and have an incredible opportunity to capitalize. At Milk Road, our mission is to make you smarter about crypto. That's why we're doing today's podcast and why we send you a daily newsletter for free. But if you're ready to level up as an investor, then let me tell you about Milk Road Pro. We crafted this resource for investors who are already smart enough about crypto and are looking for more actionable insights on how to invest successfully in one of the fastest growing industries on earth. Every week, we break down the latest trends, dive into tokenomics of popular and up-and-coming tokens, and get into the nitty-gritty of market analysis, all to help you invest smarter. Plus, we have a private Discord community for pro members. It's like your backstage pass to the Milk Road crew, exclusive insights, hot tips, and live AMAs with our team. Now, if you're looking to level up as an investor, then click the link in the show notes below and sign up to Pro today. Don't let this bull market opportunity slip through your fingers.
GM, Jacquelyn, Pomp, welcome to Milk Road Radio.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Super excited to have you both. Longtime fan of both of you personally and Milk Road. The Milkman loves you guys. He was super stoked that you're both coming on the show today. Pomp, I want to start with you. And you've said multiple times as a founder of multiple businesses and an investor in a lot of tech businesses that you are part of, that one of the most important objectives of any business is to solve your customer's problem. Let's start there. What is the problem that you see and the problem that Token Relations is going to solve?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of kind of traditional business outside of the crypto industry, they basically have three different types of communications efforts. They have marketing, which is focused on how do you go get more customers and users. Then they have a PR effort, which is basically let's go talk to journalists and help them understand our story so then they can tell their audience. And then they have this third bucket. And depending on if it's the public market or private market, they call it different things. In the private market, they usually think of it as some sort of community operation or like a retention element. In the public market, they think of it as like shareholder relations, et cetera. But basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to communicate to their investors. They're trying to communicate to their stakeholders. They're trying to communicate to the quote unquote market. So, in the public markets, they're trying to talk to analysts and things like that. If you go and you look in the crypto industry, we have marketing teams and we have PR teams, but we don't have that third bucket. We don't have the people who are focused on the users, communicating with your users who already exist, communicating with the developers that are building on top of your blockchain, the people who are building inside of your ecosystem, the people who are holding a token or who are a user of one of the apps within your ecosystem, et cetera. And so if you think about that, like that's actually the biggest group of people to talk to. And it's probably the most important for a lot of these kind of ecosystems. And so we think that we can build a solution to help solve that problem.
Okay, so Jacquelyn, over to you. How are you going to solve that problem? Clear problem, definitely a problem, especially unique problem to crypto because you have way more stakeholders than really any other businesses had previously, and their capital stakeholders, which unfortunately tend to yell at you a lot more if you don't make them more money. So they care a lot more, but how will Token Relations solve it?
Yeah, I think the first and most important step is to establish that direct connection with these ecosystem players or token holders, however you want to frame it. And we launched the business initially with Aptos, Avalanche, and Optimism to kind of start building that out. And in this like V1 era, we are doing newsletters, quarterly webinars, biannual reports, kind of diving into making sense of like what's going on these ecosystems and chains, and why does it matter, in a way that the people who are invested in the business, either with like a financial stake or just interested, can learn more about it all the time. So that's really the first step that we're doing. And then we kind of see an opportunity here to build it out in a technological way so we could scale it and also customize it to fit other blockchains, protocols, and projects that might not be at the same stage that these ones are.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my first questions when I saw you guys launch and checked it out was, is this a service or is this a product? So what I'm hearing is V1 right now, and you just launched a month ago, so might be a big question to ask, but so V1 service, you are a service right now. V2 product, am I hearing that correctly?
That's right. Yeah. If you think of, a lot of times founders have this, like, I'm going to go in a corner and I'm going to build something, and then I'm going to do this big reveal. I'm going to pull back the curtain and like, look what I built. It's amazing. The problem with that, although it can work at times, is that you really have been disconnected from the market, right? You don't know what the market wants. And so this is not the type of business where we're going to like try to go to Mars. And so like, who cares what the market wants? And we're going to go do something completely new. And so the feedback is really important. And so the way that we are kind of sequentially building the product is, first, we're starting with the things that don't scale. It's just like, let's go do the content. Let's go figure out from a service perspective, how do we solve this problem? And it's going to be painful. It's going to take a lot of time and effort. It's going to be, every person in tech is going to be like, you can just automate this stuff. But like, let's figure out what those things are first, and then we will launch the product. And that product really is, one, automating a lot of the processes and service and things like that. But also, two, is we think that there is the unlocking of a lot of use cases once we're able to launch that. And, you know, I'll give you kind of a very easy example, which is, in any other industry in the world, you can segment your audience. In crypto, if you want to communicate with your ecosystem, let's say you want to communicate to your developers. You go on Twitter and you blast your entire ecosystem with communications for a developer. You then go in your Discord or your Telegram, you do the same thing. And so it's not presently possible to segment your audience. So imagine if you were Apple and you had to send the same email to everyone regardless of who you're talking to. That's insane, right? That is what we currently ask of these groups, because there's not very good data and analytics. There's not very good segmentation tools. There's not very good understanding of what to communicate, who to communicate with, when to communicate, like all these things. And so we think that there's a product in there that we can build, and we've got some pretty strong ideas around that will help introduce some of the things that are actually not new. They're present in other industries. We just want to bring them to this industry now.
Another thing that you guys talked a lot about around the launch, and the articles that I read in prep for this show spoke about the issues with the current platforms that we use. The main platforms that we use to communicate with our audience are Twitter. I mean, in the case of crypto, it's all on X. You mentioned Discord and Telegram, but mostly X. We rely on X. We're not using email. We're not really on LinkedIn, kind of, but
Milk Road's on email.
Yeah, well, not to communicate with directly with our token holders. Definitely not. I don't think most token holders are giving emails. I mean, if they are, then they're willing to be not to come out of their anonymity in a way that a lot aren't yet. So these algorithms control so much. That kind of perked my interest. What are you thinking when you think about building something that maybe isn't algorithmically controlled? Just tell me what your thinking is there, because I'm trying to frame what that leads to. Are you building a X competitor in the future here? Is that where this is going?
Yeah, we're not building a competitor to X or Telegram or Discord. I think this is a service where people in these ecosystems can get everything all in one place without the noise or the chance of an algorithm not letting these things show up on their feed. Like, let's say, for instance, like Avalanche tweets something out. What are the odds that their 1 million followers are all going to see that? Probably not. Zero. Like, if you look right now, it's a certain amount. Yeah, it's zero. Yeah. The odds are zero. And so we're not trying to compete with these algorithms, but provide a place where people know they could get access to this information, metrics, etc., in a way that is understandable and meets them where they are. So I think in this like V1 era that we're in, it is kind of like Web 2 with the emails of the newsletters. But as we transition into the next phase, it grows into more of a Web 3 centric framework.
Pomp, you're a media builder. You've got a very successful newsletter that goes out every day. You've got a very successful podcast. How do you think about this business in the landscape of media, or is this business not fit into the landscape of media? Does it fit more into this communications bucket, which I guess has so much crossover with media anyways?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I love businesses that on their face, everyone kind of like scoffs at. They're like, oh, like, you know, what are these people doing over there in the corner? Because there's not a lot of competition. And also it allows you to get the product right before people really realize like, hey, I need that thing. And so when people hear content, when they hear service, like, oh, it's just a media thing, you know, whatever. But again, it's a tech company that you start off with the service to learn to then be able to build the technology. And I guess in one regard, all tech companies are media companies today, right? Like, you know, every business needs to be good at communicating and sharing this information, et cetera. On the other hand, I think that both Jackie and I's background, you know, Jackie has a extensive background now working at multiple places covering the industry. And so when you think about whether we're building technology or not, people are going to use the technology to tell a story, to share information, to communicate. Having people who have that background building the technology is actually really valuable. And so I think that we're well positioned to build a technology company that is going to touch these components of media or content, communications, et cetera. And, you know, I think we're less worried about like which bucket do we put it in, and more about like if we solve the customer's problem, then that's ultimately how we're going to be measured on success or failure.
But fitting into a bucket is important when you're trying to sell a service. So it must be challenging for you right now. What are you finding when you reach out to potential customers? I mean, you mentioned Aptos, Avalanche, and Optimism are your first launch partners. Are they understanding this and where you fit and the need for this? Or are they like passing you around from marketing to PR to investor relations, whatever that might be for a chain?
Yeah, I think that most teams, they just know like, hey, we need help doing this and we don't have somebody internally. And so each team's a little bit different. You know, I think Jackie specifically has done a great job of kind of navigating inside of these organizations and figuring out who's responsible for this body of work. Sometimes it is people in marketing. Sometimes it is a communications person. And so just, you know, trying to understand, okay, what are the problems? And one of the things that I've learned over time that we're doing here is we're launching with a very small group of kind of design partners. And the goal is not just, hey, let's go sign up a bunch of customers. The goal is let's work. And we're basically going to build custom solutions for those early partners. And then our job will be to take those custom solutions, figure out what the commonalities are, and bring it to the rest of the industry over time. But, you know, it's a pretty good gig for the first couple of customers is you get Jackie and I working directly with you to help solve your problem. And we're doing it because we think that there's this bigger opportunity. But in the beginning, unfortunately, for those who think that it's some nice, sexy, you know, celebratized thing, a lot of email, a lot of, you know, figuring it out before we can really start building technology.
I think also once we like sit down and talk with them or even prospective clients, they understand it a lot better than like what it looks like on face value, because it's not marketing, it's not PR, it's not comms, but it's this like extra bucket that we keep talking about. And so when we explain it to them and they realize like what an important service it is, especially like gaining new ecosystem players, but also retaining the attention of your existing ones so that they continue to be long-term holders. We know how fast things change in crypto and how short the attention span can be for a lot of people. And so just kind of creating value where they didn't even know they needed it, some of them, and then others on short points where they have so much stuff going on that is a pain point for them in itself, that they can't keep track of everything. And we kind of help do that.
Yeah, you mentioned this term ecosystem stakeholders. And also when you first launched, I looked at the business name and I thought, is this a business name or is this a new category name? Was where my mind went to. Is it both? Was that the goal here?
That's something I joked before to Pomp, that like we kind of created a term here, but that was where it was. It was like very tongue in cheek where we came up with the name.
When you mention ecosystem stakeholders, and obviously this is one of the challenges that any crypto business faces, is you have multiple different stakeholders very early on in your business. Usually a lot of the stakeholders, particularly on the investor side, you wouldn't have this level or this scale of stakeholders until you went public, at which point you would be at a much different stage of your company, prepared to manage those type of relations and those type of communications. So when you think about, because we have so many listeners who are in this exact stage of their business. They're running a chain, they're working for a chain, either founding or they're building. What is your advice to how they should think about this, solving this problem of communicating to, and you might just say call token relations, but any advice you can share for them of how they might better format their communication with their ecosystem stakeholders?
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, you definitely jumped the gun on that one. I would say come work with us, but I also think it's so important to make things accessible and understandable. A lot of times these founders are extremely technical. It makes sense. And they don't know how to disseminate information in a non-technical way. And that's something that I bring my background from into this business, and making things that are highly technical, not technical for the audience. Sure, there will be technical like readers and listeners, developers by like the thousands, but that doesn't necessarily mean the whole ecosystem is technical. And if there's an upgrade going on or something that you're presenting as a new product launch, explain why it matters in the bigger picture. It's not just enough to say like, hey, we made this cool new thing. Like, great, everyone does that. But why does it matter? What does it mean for your project? How can that kind of like be incorporated in the bigger crypto picture? And where do you see it going? And also like following up on those things is so significant. And so many projects never follow up on their announcements. It's just like a toss in the ocean, basically. That's not the same, but you know what I mean.
So simple, right? To follow up, but it's
simple.
So easy to forget. Okay, so you're approaching this from, there's an issue that we have with the current platforms that we use to communicate. As you said at the beginning, you put something on X, doesn't mean that everyone's going to see it. Are you trying to teach them to use different channels? Are you saying stick to Discord, Telegram, and X for now? What are the channels that you are encouraging your clients to use?
I think the big thing on channels is you're still going to use those channels for marketing. You're still going to use those channels for various communication efforts. But if you want to ensure that you understand who you're talking to, if you want to segment your audiences, if you want to be able to measure the actual efficacy of those communications, and you want to make sure that they're done on platforms where algorithms and notification trays don't block you from being able to communicate with those individuals, we think that we can build a product specifically suited to do that for a specific industry. And so we're not going to compete with X. We're not going to compete with Telegram or Discord. We think that those are really, really good channels for the things that they're being used for today. The problem is that they're the only tools available. And so we think rather than try to, get teams to swap tools out, what we actually want to do is we want them just to put one more tool in their toolbox and be able to use it for a very specific use case where we think that the market is probably bigger than most people believe it is today.
I completely agree with that final statement. Okay, I want to touch on, you both have been very successful in your careers. So why invest your time and your money in this? Pomp, let's start with you. As a multi-business, founder and investor, what do you look at and what caught your eye about this opportunity that made you say, hey, this has good odds to succeed?
Yeah, I don't care so much about the success. I think that kind of just comes with, kind of correctly operating. What I would say is I got a problem, which is when I see problems, it frustrates me if they don't get solved. And it became obvious no one else was going to do this. At this point in my career, I'm very intentional about the things we go after, but also the people that we do it with. I talked to exactly one person about this idea, Jackie, and I told her, I said, either you do it or I'm not going to do it. Right. And I left it with her. I said, you decide whether you want to do it or not, but I'm not going to go and talk to 20 people. And it's just like, you're the right person to do it. If you want to do it, let's do it. If not, then the problem's going to go unsolved. But from my standpoint, it's just like, if there is a problem that exists for a large group of people, we need folks to go solve them. And this one, I pretty much had convinced myself no one else was going to do it. So we might as well go try.
Jackie.
Yeah.
On your end, you're an award-winning journalist. I don't know what shaves more years off your life, entrepreneurship or journalism. They probably tie pretty closely.
We'll find out soon.
What made you make the leap and make the shift?
Yeah, I think, when Pomp originally reached out to me, I was like, either it's an embargo that he really wants me to cover or he's going to ask me for a business idea. I know he's really big in business, and I thought maybe there was a chance that he wanted to start something with me. And personally, I was looking into doing my own thing anyways. I find the media landscape really depressing, as I'm sure you see. And I feel like personal brands are a little more powerful sometimes than media organizations as a whole. Like people would come and read TechCrunch Crypto because I was the one writing it. That's what I was told. That's kind of like how it worked. And like I built up, you know, the TechCrunch Crypto coverage there, and I made it what it is when I left. But at the time, I really wanted to do something that was my own, that I owned it. And I was really passionate about the crypto industry. Like I'm really deep in the crypto Twitter lore, like the whole cultural situation. Like I'm in the Discords, I'm in everything. And like some people argue like reporters should stick to reporter communities. And I never agreed with that. I always felt like even though I was in the reporter world, I was still a part of the crypto community. Of course, I wrote about the bad news. Of course, I looked at things objectively and like definitely took everything with a grain of salt. Not every project's going to be amazing. You see a million of the same pitches 100 times. And for me, it was like, I wanted to make a better impact in the space than like what I was capable of doing at TechCrunch or as a reporter as a whole. I was covering a $1 trillion industry and I was one person. And there were a lot of things that I had to pass up on that I couldn't do just because of like my own capacity. And so like this business is kind of trying to be a solution to that problem in many ways, but in the sense that there are so many projects out there that deserve coverage, that deserve like bigger story, that they're not getting it. And if we could provide that for projects building on certain chains, I think that's extremely valuable. And I mean, when Pomp came to me about this idea, it made sense to me. It was of interest to me. And it kind of goes back to like the problem that I felt while I was a reporter. And yeah, so we talked for like an hour and a half and he left me with it, sent me kind of more information later that day. I sat on it for the weekend, and then yeah, we were working on it behind the scenes for a couple months before we launched.
That's awesome. So Pomp, I didn't realize that you had this idea, that you came up with this, you saw the problem. Take me through, how does that happen for you in terms of having a new idea and then finding a new business partner and launching a business?
The ideas smack you in the face when you hear enough people talk about it, right? I mean, I talk to these teams all day long for various businesses we have. I kept hearing the same thing, which was we're having trouble. Okay, what about this? What about this? Would you pay for this? You know, how much would you pay? What would it have to look like? What's important? Do you have somebody on your team who could actually do it? Or is it something you'd outsource? You just ask a couple of questions. And by the third or fourth team, that was like, not just like, yeah, we need help, but was like, we're dying without help. It was like, okay, like there's definitely a market here. And so it's just kind of, over time, you're like, your human algorithm, your gut just gives you enough data points where you're like, yeah, I think that this is something that's possible. And so at some point you just suck it up, get some courage and make the bet and see what happens.
And find the time somehow in an already jam-packed schedule, I'm sure. How did you guys first meet? How did this relationship happen?
I covered one of his announcements years ago. I think one of the first interactions was when he started Inflection Points, which is a hiring firm. And we've stayed in touch throughout the years. I think that's correct, right?
Yeah.
To be honest, I meet a lot of people, as does he. And I go back in the archives and look, but I'm pretty sure that was one of the first interactions we had. I think he just followed me on Twitter, and I was like, what's this big account doing following me? So must have popped up on his algorithm. Back to the algorithm.
So maybe the algorithm did help in that case, although I'm sure it was intentional from Pomp's side. Okay, one thing that happened when you guys launched Token Relations was a bit of a mixed bag of emotions and reaction from the crypto Twitter world. Jacquelyn, I think on your end, you got a lot of positive feedback. A lot of people were excited. It was fairly standard. Yeah. Pomp, you didn't get so much of a positive feedback. You actually got a lot of negative feedback from a lot of Bitcoin maxis. First question, Pomp, are you a Bitcoin maxi?
I'm a Bitcoin maximalist in the sense that I think that Bitcoin is going to be the winner in the monetary kind of race. I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist and don't think other people should be either, to think that everything else is going to not be valuable, right? It's kind of like saying the internet comes out. You're like, I'm a iMac or like a Apple maxi. Like they got me. Steve Jobs and Tim Cook got me. I use a bunch of Apple products. But I also understand that Android is going to be valuable too, right? And so I think that that's kind of how you put me in there. And I would actually disagree with you. I think that I got lots of positive feedback. I just look at it a little bit different, which is when the most rigid-minded people attack, it's actually a positive sign.
Mm-hmm.
You're violating their worldview. You're violating the framework that they have. And two things happen. One, over time, I've learned that the more they attack, the closer to the truth you are. And then the second thing is, man, are they good at marketing? They are so good at marketing, right? And they attack, and every one of them that responds or, hate quote tweets or whatever, they're just making this stuff go viral. And so a component of it is we've done this enough times now where, we understand what's going to kind of push buttons and stuff. And again, I don't wake up every day thinking about how do I upset people, but I also am not, going to change what we're going to do based on what other people are going to say. And so if you understand, hey, this is going to upset a certain group of people who happen to be really good at making things go viral when they're upset with it. Okay, let's see what happens. And I think that our announcement kind of between the both of us probably got almost 1 million views, right? And so
that's a win.
Well, here's what I can say is the announcement got 1 million views. We had something like 60 or more inbound leads after day one.
Damn.
And the business is profitable and we're growing. So, some people look at it and they say, oh my God, that's horrible. Those people were so mean to you on the internet. What people? I don't even remember what they said, right? We got a great business. We're moving on. And so I think that, again, it helps to have gone through it a bunch of times. No, as much as I joke around, I honestly do believe that there's a lot of really, really good people in the Bitcoin world. Most of them are not kind of the most hardcore, kind of toxic maxis, if you will. But even those people, I actually see eye to eye with them on a lot. Right. And obviously we're all sympathetic to Bitcoin and the problems in society, et cetera. I may approach things I disagree with, differently, but we need them too. There's times where I'm glad that we've got those folks on our side and, they ramp up and they go after, whoever's trying to attack Bitcoin, et cetera. And in those moments, I'm proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with them.
Jacquelyn, on your end, you've covered every chain in the space, every different community, maybe not everyone, only the good ones, only the legit ones. What are your thoughts on this sort of maximalist culture and the impact of that on the growth of crypto and the adoption of crypto, especially when really we're still so small and we're trying to bring on billions here? Do you think that's a good thing? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I see the pros and cons of it. I hear Pomp's sentiments and I can echo some of them. But I think, for me, when I first got into crypto, it was through Bitcoin. And I feel like that's the entry point for most people. If not Bitcoin, then maybe Ethereum and maybe Solana nowadays. But for most people, it is going to be through Bitcoin. And you kind of hear over and over that Bitcoin is the way, there is no other way. And then all of a sudden you might learn about something else called Ethereum. And then it kind of spirals and snowballs. And I think in a way it is a little problematic, but I think similar to what he's saying is Bitcoin is the grandfather of cryptocurrencies. I think that's going to get the most adoption from mainstream audiences, from traditional finance, etc., given the way it works and how long it's been around. But is that to say the other blockchains out there aren't valuable? Absolutely not. I see so much value across so many different chains for so many different reasons, app-specific chains, general blockchains, ones that are just, meme coins that are building chains too. I don't know if that's the future of finance, but it's a free market. And I think the reality is that these companies and protocols, etc., should be allowed to create whatever they want. And if people see value in it, who are we to tell them that it's not valuable? It's for the market to decide.
Yeah, I was so bearish on meme coins for so long because I just didn't get it. But I was really bullish on social tokens. I really believed in every community that should have a token that connects them. They should be able to be on chain. They should have capital formation, all the benefits of being on chain. And then I realized I was like, oh, wait, these are the same freaking thing. I'm missing the forest through the trees here. And it actually totally changed my view. And now I actually kind of think that meme coins they definitely have a place. Bringing culture on chain can do a lot in the long term. Doesn't mean that I'm sitting here saying that you should go invest in meme coins. So there's a big difference between that gap. And you can join the Milk Road Discord if you want to see people talking about what meme coin to invest in next, because everyone's trying to make 100x all the time, because apparently making 2x isn't enough, right?
That's
Pomp,
too
you're an
traditional
investor.
finance.
Like, yeah, like, most people are excited to beat the S&P every year. And here we are. How do you feel about that? Like, as an investor, what's your advice to our listeners or to your readers on how they should frame themselves when everybody is so obsessed with these massive returns?
I think it's human nature. What are people in the stock market doing? They're trying to drive massive returns. What are they doing? They're speculating, they're gambling, right? We call it investing because they're doing a little bit of research, but there's plenty of people who go to Las Vegas, did plenty of research, studied, and then they go play blackjack, right? There's not really any other way to describe if half the options volume in the stock market is 0-day options. People are literally just betting what is the price of this asset going to be at the end of the day. It's crazy. And so that's not bad. It's just how the world works. I don't do it, right? Do I buy meme coins? I don't know. I got 2 or 3 that, are very small, like basically a non-meaningful amounts of money because a friend sent it to me. It's hilarious, right? And basically I want to be there alongside my friends. No different than if they sent me, hey, do you want to go, this weekend and, go to the casino? Sure. I'm not trying to get rich going to the casino. I'm not trying to get rich off meme coins, right? But I'll put a couple of dollars in and see what happens. And then it gives something to talk about over the weekend. Did you see this? Did you see that? Like, whatever. But I also think that I almost look at it as like I'm paying for a little bit of an education as well. It's so far outside of what I do on a day-to-day basis. Nobody that I know in the like quote unquote sophisticated kind of investment world is going to go and name your coin. My friends will listen to this and be upset I didn't name their favorite coin.
I was just going to say, I love that you're not naming it.
He's doing a very good job of not naming whatever that token is.
I'm waiting for you to say one.
No, I'm not going to do it. But it is part of culture. I mean, crypto culture, but speaking even broader, part of kind of internet culture. And so as an investor, there's this element of like, you got to understand this stuff. I probably feel like I'm getting old on a daily basis. There's some folks, I'll pick on Will Clemente. He's texted me once or twice with, a jumbled list of letters. And I got to ask him, what's that mean? And then he like unpacks it and it's like some whole sentence that he sent in 5 letters. Right. And I'm like, damn, he got me. Right. He'll like be like, you're getting old. Right. And so again, I'm not going to send the same text message to a friend of mine, but I better understand that stuff. I better understand, kind of the language and culture and all that. And so it's this like very weird thing of like, how do you kind of stay up to speed, but also not fulfill the meme of what's the guy, he shows up with the skateboard. He's like, hey, how you doing, kids? So I think a lot about like the meme coin stuff is maybe I'm like intellectually fascinated with it from a like understanding standpoint, but also I know how the story ends and we'll see.
Pomp riding a skateboard with your suit and tie on is a visual that I've got stuck in my head now that I feel like we need to make happen.
Just me riding a skateboard in general would be bad.
Okay, let's not do that then, because we don't want you to break your wrist or anything like that. Okay, so before we wrap here, I got one sort of crypto question and then one personal question for both of you. On the crypto blockchain side, our audience, one thing that they wanted us to ask coming into this episode was to pick both your brains on where are we at with the evolution of crypto and blockchain. If you compare it to the internet or to past tech, everybody gets so caught up in these bull cycles and gets so scared, especially when there's so much of their money is riding on it. And they start to think, oh, it's all over. Oh, it's just the beginning. I'm curious, when you guys step back, when you zoom out, what do you think? Where do you think we're at? How do you even frame or explain to people in your network where we're at? Jacquelyn, you can go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, I hate the saying like we are early, but it's honestly correct. I think it's just so oversaid. But there's a very strong truth to it in the sense that crypto is so prominent and in your face right now. And if it's being built on a blockchain, you know about it. But I actually spoke to, this was like a year or two ago, that the Avalanche co-founder, MNCer, told me that he wants Avalanche to be something that like nobody knows about in the future, in the sense that everyone's building on it and uses it, but they don't know that it's like embedded into the technology. The same way that like when I order something on Uber Eats or I order an Uber, I don't know how it got to me, but it got to me. And the same thing with crypto. It's like, we want to kind of create a reality, and by we, I mean like the whole industry, where it is embedded in everyone's everyday lives, and that people see the value in it and they see the convenience of what this technology can bring. And I don't think we're there yet. I think the crypto industry, we speak in a bubble a lot of the times. And when I step out of this and like I talk to my friends outside of the industry about things, they have no idea what's going on in here. They don't even know what Ethereum is. They'll be like, have you heard of this? And they'll like hold up their phone and it'll be like Dogecoin. And I'm like, of course I've heard of Dogecoin, you know, but like that just shows like how they really are so not a part of this space. And it's going to take a lot of work for it to become more mainstream. I mean, there's been damage done to the industry due to like cringe and polarizing factors, which I'm sure you could think of some in your own head. But there are also some really amazing benefits that have, I think, personally helped the financial institutions out there that need more expediting and like less intermediaries, etc. So I mean, the saying is silly that we are early, but I do think if we were looking at it like a baseball game, we're probably on first base. And I think like home run would be like 5 to 10 years down the line at the very least.
Pomp, what about you?
I tend to think that it's less about early and late, right? I think that like Jacquelyn did a good job of explaining kind of how to think through that. To me, I think of it more as almost like a horizontal thing. Are we black and white with the legacy industry, or are we blending? Definitely like the lines are blurring and blending, and like there's more of a gray area now and there's more overlap and like they're coming together. And so you can think of it either way, but the reason why I think of it from that perspective is like, as these come together and that line blurs, you're going to start pulling more capital from the legacy world, and they got a lot of capital, right? And so, you know, if you use Bitcoin, like if you have a finite asset and more capital coming in, like that's obviously good for a long-term price, but also the rest of the industry will benefit as well. And so how to measure it, I have no clue. I think that we are further along than we were 2 years ago, but in 2 years from now, we'll be even further along. And so like we're heading in the right direction. And so the reason why I think that that is important is because it gives you the confidence to keep building and doing things in the industry, right? If you were seeing it actually head the opposite way, you'd say, is this going to be around in 5 or 10 years? You know, I still see data points that suggest not only is it going to be around, it's going to be around, it's going to be much more vibrant, it's going to be much larger, it's going to be more people participating, more users, all that stuff. And so from a capital allocator seat, like that's what you want to see. You want to see that the future is brighter than, you know, the current. And so you want to start kind of pushing towards that.
Pomp, I heard you talk about time in a very interesting way previously. Can you tell our audience about how you think about time and where we're at right now? And I can cue you if you don't know what I'm referring to.
My guess is that you're talking about, somebody asked me like, what does the crypto industry need? And I said, just time to pass.
Yes.
Yeah. People don't like when I say that, but it's true. Humans want control. Humans want to, you know, tell me what to do and I'll go do it. Fortunately or unfortunately, in this case, there's nothing a human really is going to do other than allow time to pass. And it's kind of the 80-20 rule. The passage of time is probably 80% of what's going to change. So what does that mean? Regulators are going to get old and get out of those jobs. And then people who grew up on the technology are going to get into those seats. Regulation will become friendlier over time, right? Capital allocated to the industry. The current capital allocators will get old. They will move out of those seats, and young people who grew up with this technology will then assimilate into those seats, right? You can just go through all these things. Users, right? They're growing up with it. They're going to start using it more. And so like as time passes, you essentially allow the native users of these technologies and the holders of these assets to permeate into positions of power, influence, control, et cetera, to the point where I've long said that a Bitcoiner will be president, not somebody who's like running on, let's take down the Federal Reserve and I'm going to make Bitcoin the, you know, global reserve currency, like all that. I don't, it's too radical of a message in my opinion, at least in today's climate and kind of economy. But somebody's going to become the president who has stocks, who has bonds, who has Bitcoin, who has real estate, you know, whatever. And so today there's somebody who is a stock investor who's president. We're not like,
oh my God, that's incredible.
Wow. Stock investors aren't like cheering.
Yeah.
Bitcoiners maybe are a little bit better at cheering when one of their own does something, right? But it's more of just like the asset is going to become in everyone's portfolio. And so naturally, you know, the president will hold some Bitcoin. Well, if the president holds Bitcoin, they're probably not going to be as abrasive to it, right? I think there's an age and generation gap, et cetera. And so like the passage of time, again, we don't control it. So we got to be okay just saying like, look, time is time. We can work, in the meantime, if you will. But I do think that that's probably going to be 80% of what's going to be the tailwind for the industry, is just allowing more people to get comfortable for a longer period of time with the technology.
Pomp, I don't want to wait, man. I don't want to wait. I want it now. Human nature, right?
Bitcoin should teach everyone to be a long-term thinker, right?
Yeah. Well, but what's interesting about what you bring up when you talk about time is how monetary policies and the monetary system moves quite slow in terms of time. But there are still people alive today who would remember the gold standard. And then there's all of us in this conversation who wouldn't remember the gold standard. And we all have lived on fiat, and that's all we've known. And then I look at my nieces who are 15 years old, and I buy them Bitcoin. Otherwise, they wouldn't have Bitcoin, but I definitely buy them Bitcoin every year for their birthday. And they are going to grow up in a world where they only knew Bitcoin and Ethereum and other tokens as well. So there's so much truth in what you're saying, Pomp, is that we really do, unfortunately, need time. But nobody wants to hear that when we're all here to make some money. So appreciate your sentiment for sure. Okay, one personal question before we wrap. Jacquelyn, I'll go to you first and then Pomp second. Jacquelyn, I'm flipping this question on you. You asked this question to your listeners in your podcast, Talking Tokens, which is a great podcast. So everybody listening, if you want to hear a great new podcast, make sure you check out Talking Tokens. We'll link to it in the show notes. You asked this question at the end, which is, can you leave our listeners with one piece of advice?
That is a question that I ask every single guest. And I think my piece of advice would just be thoughtful about your time and where you spend it. Someone told me a long time ago to protect my peace as a reporter, that a lot of people will come to you for favors. People will demand a lot from you. And that applies to anyone, not just reporters. And think about like, what's the best way to optimize your time and share it with the people around you to better your career, better your life, and make it just like a better place overall. So yeah, protect your peace and be thoughtful about your time.
Cool. I love it.
That's what I do.
What about you?
My one piece of advice, make sure that you build a life outside of business and investing. There's a lot of young people that we work with that work at our companies, that run our companies, et cetera. And when you're young and ambitious and, you want to work hard, it's very easy to become obsessed with work. I can say that because I did it. But, getting married, having kids, kind of building a life outside of work has been very rewarding for me. I think it's very rewarding for a lot of my friends. And so I think the more people could do that, the better they'll be.
I love that. Pomp, I got to ask you one more question. Every day on Twitter, you say, good morning. Today is going to be a great day. Let's get after it relentlessly. Why?
That's literally what I think when I get up. And I tweeted it one day, and I realized that by saying it to myself and writing it out is pretty powerful. And then I did it another day and another day. And for better or worse, pretty simple man, wear the same tie, say the same thing every morning, eat the same thing every day. It works for me. Hopefully, helps a couple other people. If not, maybe people are just laughing and enjoying it.
I love it. Okay. Before we wrap, where can people find out about token relations? Where can they follow you? Any show you guys want to give, whether you're hiring or whether you want clients, whatever it is.
You can find us at token_relations on X. And on there is a link tree that fills to everything about token relations, all the products we offer, the podcast, newsletter, things we've rolled out for Aptos, Avalanche, and Optimism so far. You could contact us through there. If you are interested in working with us, it's just contact@token-relations.com. Or you could reach out to me or Pomp on Twitter. Probably me, because I'm sure he has like a bajillion DMs, but I'm the better contact point, I think. And yeah, we would love to take on new clients of all sizes, crypto projects, protocols, blockchains. If you're listening, feel like you need a better relationship with your ecosystem, we want to help you do that.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for leading a new category. I don't get a lot of founders that are not only building a business, but also leading a category. And I think it's a very important and noble mission that you guys are chasing. So excited to watch. We'll have to have you guys back on whenever you launch V2 and the product, because that'll really get our listeners excited. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having
me.
Thanks for listening, and everybody, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Milk Road Radio, the easiest path to get smarter about crypto. If you like this episode, share it and hit subscribe or follow so you don't miss out on the next one. There's also a link in the description to our free 5-minute daily newsletter where we simplify crypto for you while making you laugh. And if you're willing to step up your crypto investing game, then we'll leave a link to Milk Road Pro as well, your #1 resource to help you invest successfully in crypto. One final note, this podcast is for educational purposes only, and nothing we say is financial advice. Crypto is risky, so you should never invest more than you're willing to lose. Thank you, friends, and we'll see you in the next one.